Welcome back, guys. My name is Demitry Sebastian.
And I'm Wes Kendall.
And we are back in session where your fitness and lifestyle questions are answered and bro science is put to the test. We have a couple of updates that I'm very happy about. My shirt finally came in. My Suns in 4 shirt, for those who are watching the video.
Suns in 4!
Suns in 4. So if you haven't been paying attention already, this is the first time in a long time that our shitty basketball team that's been a bubble team since Nash and Shaq were around is finally doing well. By the time this comes out, we might have already been knocked out, but we're going to put positive vibes out into the energy.
We're going to be aggressive unnecessarily until then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you get into a fight, just make sure you're really cool about it and yell Suns in 4 at the end. Everyone will like you for it.
Make sure you can win from the bottom.
You got to win from the bottom, which is true in many situations. So, but moral of the story is Arizona sports, we typically suck, we struggle, support you boys. Additionally, the swear jar now has gone through some updates. It now is not just a Prego jar, but it is a swear jar.
Yes.
And we now have benefactors. If you want to support Wes and his inability to get his potty mouth in check, we now have the free speech fund.
Thank you.
You can now send
have a donor
funds to Wes so that he can afford to continue cursing on this podcast because he was going to slowly go out of...
You can sponsor my freedom of speech.
Exactly. Who was our first benefactor?
Well, First Sergeant Bersinio from our unit, he was a big believer in freedom of speech.
Exactly.
And he donated 10 swears to our freedom of speech fund right here.
10 swears.
10 swears.
Like if you don't swear, then his contribution means nothing.
I know. I'm like basically shitting on his...
Oh, yeah, he got it. and you know what? And you know what? There's a
no, here you
box.
go. Well, good thing I got it right here.
We knew it was going to happen. It happens.
Really, like, that
You were wanting it.
Scripted, but like, I just want to say...
I was just about to say, let it happen naturally, and here we are, lo and behold.
Okay, well.
So, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about tracking your food, different methods that go into that, and like some of the common ways, like, you know, between macros, calories, or portions.
This one was actually great for me because I went into this prepping for it, assuming you would just agree with me on everything. I started like writing stuff down, like, oh yeah, there's these calculators that tell you exactly which macro, this, that, and the other, and you came in, you're like, cool, so this is why I don't agree with that. And I was like, save it. Hold on to it, because there's not a lot of dissension on this podcast. We kind of just decide to agree on most things, and I would really like to change my mind. I'd really like to learn something today.
Where's your coffee mug?
Where's my change my mind. I'm going to argue with college students.
Yes. Oh.
But so it sounds complicated, tracking your food.
Yeah.
It sounds like something that there's supposed to be some kind of math equation. We need a dietitian because it's a protected term, not a nutritionist. They can just call themselves whatever. They're basically just crunchy people living in Sedona. But apparently it can be a lot more intuitive than we're really allowing it to be.
Yeah, I think people make it a lot more complicated than it should be. At the end of the day, research shows that the most successful dieters or lifestyle athletes eat similar meals day to day. And when you do that, and you have a baseline and you have a reference on where you are, you don't have to track at like someone who is getting their MyFitnessPal points every day for 365 days on a streak. So I think that what happens is most people who end up doing this long term end up trying to make it as simple and as user friendly as possible.
So
that's what I think.
What classic knowledge was, this is, in classic, it's funny because this stuff is updating so frequently that things that happened in like the 90s, we don't even consider information anymore. Like it's like this, like the now old knowledge of stuff that happened in like 2005. We're like, yeah, we used to think that, but back in the day, 10 years ago.
Yeah, it does change quick.
What I was always told was, okay, so what you're going to do is you want to find out where to start with eating. What you're going to need to do is you need to find your macros. You need to find your basal metabolic rate. Am I saying it right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Win for Demitry. What would happen was you would say, okay, we need to get you on your basal metabolic. We need to do a very specific math equation so that you know exactly what's going on. We'd have things like Mifflin St. Youre.
Yes.
Which is something you can just go online, you type it in, you type in your weight, your general activity level, which is always incorrect because everyone like moves way less than they think they do. And then it pumps out a number that says these are your calories based on your age, weight, height, relative activity level.
Right.
And then these are the proteins, fats, and carbs you eat.
Yes.
And then you just go off to the races for a few weeks because you need to test it. Because if you gain weight, then you need to lower it. Right. If you lose weight, then you need to higher because we're trying to find the base. Is that still true today? Do we need it to be that complicated, or is it easier?
You could definitely do that, and that gives you like a ballpark starting point. Like you said, you'll have to definitely make an adjustment within a few weeks. Another method that a lot of dietitians use, and I've seen as well, is they'll do a dietary recall, and that's where like they'll have their client, kind of recite or write out what they ate the last day or two, and then they take that and they use that as a starting point. They're like, hey, we're going to start with, you're only eating 2 meals a day and it's mostly, like carbs and this, we're going to start here, but instead we're going to change the portions to this.
So they can do that much with only 2 days?
You can do it with 1 day if you have to.
That's interesting, because it's funny, because a lot with working out, same with diet, is like if you get a trainer, or like you can't be lying to them.
Yeah, if you lie, you ruin it.
Exactly. Like it's a lot of people be like, yeah, I mean, I ate just chicken yesterday. It's like, but I put 18 servings of barbecue sauce on top and ketchup. Like, one of the funny things that I think a lot of people had this problem, and I myself did, was I thought ketchup didn't have sugar in it.
Oh, right.
You learn that kind of stuff.
It's all sugar.
I know.
Yeah,
it is. It's vinegar, it's tomato, it's sugar.
It's
and it's it. It's and that's why it's good.
That's why I don't like
it's
a vegetable.
And then if you actually get sugar-free ketchup, it sucks. It's terrible.
It tastes like vinegar.
It tastes like vinegar.
I like it.
You would probably like it. Yeah. You do like vinegar.
No, that actually brings me to like a question that I personally have.
Yeah.
So like a dirty bulk versus like a clean bulk.
Yeah.
I had a friend who, like, on his off days, he wouldn't eat like his meal prep or whatever he had set out for him, but like he still wanted to hit that like 10,000 calories or whatever.
10,000 calories. Jeez.
Yeah. That's a serious bulk. That's a serious bulk.
That was from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Terry Crews, like
10,000 calories.
He does 10.
Okay, well,
I mean, he's different. Yeah. There are people that are freaks of nature like that. But so the question is, what?
He would eat a whole like Little Caesar pizza with cheese and like marinara sauce by him.
We're just blowing through them. You guys, we need this fund, apparently.
Wow, $3 in one in like 5 minutes.
I added a second one to be cute. I didn't know.
We're blowing through this donation really quick, guys.
But he would eat a whole Little Caesar pizza by himself, like stuffed crust with marinara sauce, and that would, like, if he missed his food, like, that he was normally gonna eat, that's what he would do every single time.
I mean, that's an interesting play. It really depends.
But like, I would say, good or is that bad?
I would say generally not.
I mean, this is the problem with the dirty bulk. This is where people mess up in the dirty bulk. They start throwing in their dirty foods too quickly, that even if you eat your McDonald's and pizza in the same day, you're still under your 10,000 calories or whatever you're supposed to be at, because it's like you're so full.
Love 10,000.
So
10,000 is
I mean,
goal
Terry
now.
Crews,
Terry Crews is our new standard here.
Yeah. So basically, what you have to do is you have to eat like at least 4 good meals first, and then throw in your shitty meals after that, and then like from that point you can have the other foods. Because if you throw it in early, like if you go to brunch and you have like your pancakes and all this crazy stuff, you're not going to eat another meal for like 5 hours.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of, like, you get those carb-heavy, high-fat meals and you're lethargic all day. You're not getting anything else in.
Yeah.
And it's funny because sometimes eating badly can hurt your bulk because you're not hitting your protein goals.
Well, you can't. You're too full.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people get screwed up because they saw that one time that The Rock showed, like, his cheat meal day. They saw the time that Michael Phelps showed, like, the 4,000 calories he eats in pasta.
But he's also working out 3
You're
times
not
a day.
them.
Yeah.
You're just not them. Like, a good
Your activity level is through the roof.
Like, a cheat day for Wes is funny because it's like, I'm going to get 2 burgers, no fries, and half cheese. And it's like, if you look at it, it's high in calories and it's dense, but like he didn't get a bunch of potatoes, and you knocked out a bunch of the extra fat that wasn't super necessary. So you'll notice that people that, even if you want to call it a dirty bulk, which you sometimes can, they're still making smart decisions, which comes back to that high-level athletes eat similar things over and over. Like, a cheat day is like, I'm going to eat a huge steak, which a lot of people think, like, I'm going to eat a whole bunch of pasta. That's their cheat meal. It becomes a different
That
different
can almost
thing.
be a clean cheat meal if it's not paired with a bunch of other bad foods.
Exactly.
You can make the pasta work in your routine. Yeah.
So that doesn't quite land us in the beginning, though. What we're talking, those are kind of like outliers. Anyone who is at the Terry Crew level, anybody who is doing like cheat meals and stuff like that, you at the beginning,
I guess I didn't even.
cheat meals shouldn't even be in your mind. That's.
I mean, okay, so what's the difference between a dirty bulk and a cheat meal?
So I think the dirty bulk is you're just trying to get calories at all costs, where a cheat meal where is added to a bulk to like to add a calorie spike during the week. So it's like, for example, during my bulk this phase, I have 2 cheat meals a week. On Wednesday night, after all 5 of my meals, my 6th meal is like something high calories. My coach says at least 1,500 calories. And then my second meal on Saturday, which is my other cheat meal, he's like, just go all out. Like dessert, get a drink, get, burger, fries, all this stuff. So it's like, at that point, he said, here's the only rule is I can't have that until I've had my other 5 meals first.
Okay.
Yeah, or else you won't get it.
It makes sense. So for all of you listening right now that are starting, you've had a cheat meal your last 5 years, so you don't get to care about this yet.
You've been,
You get some time in, then we'll start talking cheat meals.
As Evan Centoponte says, take your shirt off. Do you deserve cheat meal?
You don't deserve cheat meal.
Take your shirt off.
Take your shirt off. Oh my God. Yes.
It's terrible. We're not toxic. We're just we're making
it's not toxic if you're being nice about it, but it is fair. You're asking good questions, because these are the questions that come up when people start thinking about dieting. Is they want to immediately start asking about, where can I cheat? Like, what can I do to make this easier for me? It's not gonna be easy. You're about to have a bit of a bad time. You're gonna get out of your comfort zone a little bit, unfortunately. So
maybe we should reframe it as a refeed meal used as a method to increase calories for a specific period of time.
Exactly.
That's what I view it as.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you're getting these diets started, I'm going to call it even a lifestyle. I don't like the diet thing, like, because when we're talking about, like, focusing on your portions, your macros, this, that, and the other. If you start framing it like, the West Coast diet or the LA diet or the keto, this, like, you're basically saying, I am going to do this thing that changes my life to make me lose weight. But a lot of times there's that back of your head thing that says, like, but I'm not going to do this forever because I'm cutting entire portions of my life out as far as meals go.
Right.
And that's what makes diets fail and lifestyles can continue more. So
good point.
When is it in your mind? Because we talked about this a little before we went on, is that you were big on, just like most of us were, getting like a nice calculation where, like, you got to hit this number, this number, this number, so that you can be a big, strong boy with nice, lean abs.
Right.
Is that the way most people start? Should they start methodical, or does it come down to just like making healthy decisions and intuitively eating?
Well, I mean, obviously you're going to make mistakes along the way, and I honestly learned from a lot of that. So it's like, I started out in my fitness journey tracking with MyFitnessPal religiously and using the equations to figure out where my metabolism should be. And, while I wasted many extra minutes and hours, like plugging in data on my phone and scanning barcodes and stuff like that, what I did learn is I learned what calories are. I learned what like carbs, protein, and fats are. And I learned how those values are affected. Like, one thing that you really pick up and value after tracking your food is how much of a caloric impact fats have.
Yes.
It's like, dang, 1 gram of fat has, more than twice as much calories as a gram of protein or carbs. And it's like, you don't really see that until you start adding the food up in your diary. And you're like, oh my God, that, 30 grams of fat, is like 500 calories.
Another thing that it teaches you is that a lot of health foods that are low in trans fats, they get flavor in there with sugar.
Right.
So you'll find that a lot of these Special K, all of these Weight Watchers labeled things, if you actually, are able, you scan the barcode and you look at how it screws up your calendar or your diary, you're going to be like, oh, actually it turns out that this food isn't good for me at all. Right. And if you look at the portion size, it's like, oh, these tiny health cookies, I can only have 3 of the 9 that's in this package.
Right.
And you start learning those things. That's a good way. If you don't know anything about food, the best thing you can do to start is start reading these things. And MyFitnessPal does give you a pretty quick way to do that.
Learn that. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned Weight Watchers. Do you guys remember
Atkinson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my grandparents did that, and like basically fucking start.
You did it.
Throw $1 in.
What time is it?
We're at 15 minutes.
Wait, okay, we're past the 10-minute mark.
Yeah. All right.
Clean up the $1. But they would like.
Good.
I'm just saying, Slice didn't talk for 2 episodes. We were had the worker's gonna get deep.
That's where Jar's gonna fill up real fast.
Yeah.
But they did Atkinson's and like cut out all carbs from their diet. the second they stopped doing the diet, though, they gained all that weight back immediately.
Because it's a diet. It's a restriction.
Keyword die.
Die. It's a stupid thing that we all say. It's like, oh yeah, diet versus lifestyle, this, that, the other. It's ultimately, if you're doing something that says like, I naturally want to eat some sweets, I naturally want to eat some pasta in my life, but if you say like, I am going to restrict this no longer exists in my life, ask yourself, are you willing to give that up forever? Or is that something that's fine? Then great, awesome. That's now your lifestyle. But if you know that every single day you wake up and you want to have those cheat meals, if at the end of every week you want to eat all those things you can't have, like, is it actually working for you? And I think that the answer is probably no.
Well, we didn't know enough about how our metabolism works when that diet came out. That
that was like early 2004.
Well,
right?
the Atkins diet actually came out in the 70s. When it first came out. Yeah, and then it resurfaced in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and it became popular because, low carb diets came back into, the spotlight.
Well, because it's a good way to lose weight fast.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, which is not the solution.
The problem is people should be focusing on building their metabolism, not, restricting food. Because when you do need to cut, if you have a fast built metabolism, it's easy because you have plenty to cut with.
Okay, so we have the apps, we have the plans, we have all these things where you're weighing your foods, you're following these standards. It's funny because I think a lot of meal prepping started in the realm of the tracking community. Like, well, I have to hit exactly this many protein, I have to hit this many thing. It's like and when I say meal prepping, I mean from like a weight loss perspective. Like, a lot of people just went to work and they had to have like meals set up, but from a fitness standpoint, it was like, I want to make sure that I'm hitting a good number, because if you go to a restaurant, I don't know how much butter they put in that, I don't know how much they did with this. It's best to know what you have in there. And obviously that's still going to be always better. Like, so if you have control of your food, I think some of like the highest level people are always going to make their own meals because they know exactly what's going into it. But when we're talking about tracking a meal,
right,
do you think that it needs to be hitting those numbers, or are we trying to like hit just protein? Is it a relative health thing? Because we talked about intuitive eating, and this is what I think intuitive eating gets kind of messed up. Is your intuitive eating intelligently intuitive, or are you just kind of eyeballing and hoping for the best?
Well, I mean, I don't think you can eat intuitively unless you have a frame of reference of where you should be.
Yes.
Which we've talked about. But I think you could do either one. You have to choose. Are you going to track your food or calories and macros, or are you going to track your portions? And as I said, I think that people who tend to lean more towards the track your calories and macros are trying to like fit things in. They're like, how do I fit this cookie in? How do I fit this, extra, whatever else in this, espresso martini in or whatever.
Yeah.
Where portions are more like, you still have flexibility, because it's like, I need 2 carb portions and 1 protein portion. And that could be any carb or protein portion. And as long as you hit that, you're good. So it's like, I think once you get into the flow and the routine of living the lifestyle, as we've been saying, then when you start looking at the pieces of your plate, then it's much simpler.
And it's funny you say the pieces of your plate, because people always think about like the government with their the food pyramid or the My Plate, which has gotten a lot better. The My Plate is much better than it used to be. I think people got away from that because like the government just said eat a bunch of carbs stuff. But you're right about the trying to make stuff fit in, because I had many a night where I'd be sitting there looking at my fitness pal. I'd be like, all right, I need to get 20 grams of fat somehow.
Yeah.
And I just eat like cream cheese or something. I'd be like sitting there having a terrible time because, or I would be putting the butter on a bunch of stuff that didn't need to be, because I just need to get it in there. I'd be putting cheese on weird, because that was my problem, is I'd always be low on fats.
Yeah.
When I was using MyFitnessPal, I literally hated that so much. Is like, it would be the end of the night. I get home, like I already went to school, already went to work, get home, and I still have to eat like 300 more calories. Like, I'm not done yet.
And you jam it in, try and jam it before midnight.
Like, scoop peanut butter.
That is,
I'll do it 2 scoops and you're there.
And that's a weird way to do things. It's like you're sitting there at like 9 p.m. being like, I got to get this in before midnight. And it's like, it starts to get dumb. It gets dumb really quickly, and it starts to make less sense.
Yeah.
And you're not eating for fuel, you're eating for an equation, and it's not how real life works in my eyes.
Like, how can I get this in? I'll drink a cup of milk and I'll also have like 2 scoops of protein. Yeah.
Well, so what I do want to talk about is, we've kind of mentioned this a little bit, is that your thought process has drifted from it needs to be numbers and macros to portions. And I do want to talk more about that because you actually mentioned like some of the highest level competitors have gotten to a point where they're like, okay, I'm going to focus on portions, not the macros. But we'll talk about that. We're going to go to a quick break, and then we will tell you all about how you can become the next Mr. Olympia just by switching specifically to portions.
Yes. You'll look like Chris Bumstead in 6 weeks.
Easy peasy.
Yes.
First of all, Free Speech Fund. We're burning through it very quickly. So go ahead and hit up Wes if you want to donate to that. We don't have a Patreon, we don't have this. We've noticed that you guys have been watching YouTube videos more. We love you for that.
Thank you.
So we're going to keep mentioning it.
Our views.
We love that for you.
Yes,
we love that for us. We're having a lot of fun here, and we love helping you guys out. You can find us at BNS_radio on YouTube. Follow us on the Instagram. Follow Wes. Follow myself. I'm at Demitry Sebastian on Instagram.
And I'm WKendall_MFT on Instagram. Please send us your questions as well. All right, guys. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty on this. Now we're in the trenches. So we went over what basic tracking is. We talked about how it can help with learning what calories are and what macronutrients are and things like that. Excuse me, which we have plenty of episodes going over what those are as well. So what I think is beneficial is, you have to choose. Do you want to look at the macros? Do you want to look at your calories or your portions? And what a lot of coaches and athletes do is they focus more on the portions than anything else, because if we are going to really do the lifestyle like we talked about, most of these people are eating the same or similar meals every day, every week, and they're just changing the size of those meals, not necessarily the types of foods that they're eating. I mean, if you're an athlete, digestion is your number one weapon. So it's you have to eat foods that aren't going to make your digestion, messed up, not going to back you up, keep you, able to eat your next meal in 2 or 3 hours, as opposed to being full for 5-6 hours and never eating. And then you also have to choose foods that are going to fuel and recover your workouts. So that doesn't give you very many choices.
It locks you down a lot, actually. Every time we ask, oh, where do you want to go out to eat tonight? It's I just don't want to be bloated. That's it. I just don't want to ruin my day. And that you suddenly have to stop for a second. I mean, what, you want to go to Salad and Go or?
Yeah, you can make it work on several different things, but your options are pretty small. And then the number one thing to make it sustainable is you have to cook it in a way that you can tolerate and enjoy long term. So that doesn't mean you have to boil your chicken and only eat broccoli every meal, which are some of the foods that are on that list.
Yeah.
But what that does mean is you have to appropriately seasoned. You can add some oil. You can add a little bit of butter to your food, as long as it's accounted for and it's consistent. And then if you're in your deficit, you can still have those foods in there.
Well, it's easy. The sides are what screw you a lot of the time. So I learned that I hate chicken after some amount of time. I was just wow, this is the worst.
Yeah.
But then I learned if I'm not coating it, I'm just powdering it with flour, and then I'm making sure I'm cooking it in some oil. It gives it and I season it properly.
Yeah.
That gives it just enough flavor and gives it a little bit of texture so that I have not a bad time.
Yeah.
So does that mean I have to have a certain amount less of carbs throughout my day? Yes, but it does make my proteins not the worst thing on earth.
Yeah, so you're making a compromise in one area by taking calories away from this one thing, and you're making your other meal taste better. So that's a great example of making it work.
Yeah.
And still staying and keeping your deficit.
Exactly. You don't have to be the Ziploc bag full of steak guy. There's ways to work on it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes if you're trying to be, I guess exotically lean, then yes, you need to be this Ziploc steak chicken guy.
Yeah.
But if you're just trying to be a normal lifestyle person, then you can, as long as you balance it, compromise here and there, and you stay consistent, you'll be all right.
Yeah, if you want to be exotically lean, that costs a fee. You can hit up Wes on his Instagram direct.
Yeah, that is going to get boring. I mean, shit, we talked about it. Remember the 5 foods that work?
Yes.
That's the ultimate contest prep diet right there.
Yeah, life gets boring really quick, but your lifestyle doesn't have to be boring. You can still be in good shape.
Yeah.
It happens.
Exactly.
So when you talk portions, what is a portion? Where is this portion term coming from? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Is it from the back of the box?
Well, I mean, that is a predetermined portion that the nutrition industry made. But what we're talking about as coaches is a your macronutrient portions. That's either a protein portion, a carb portion, or a fat portion. And when most people write diets for their clients, they divide their meals up into like however many meals you're doing a day, 2 to 6, whatever it is.
Sure.
And then they usually, have their nutrients strategically striated throughout the diet, where they'll have more carbs near their workout, they'll have more fats at night where you're trying to stay full before bed, things like that. So it's like doing different portions at different times. So it's like, for example, a protein portion for someone like you or me would probably be like 5 to 8 ounces of protein, but a protein portion for my girlfriend is probably like 4 ounces of protein.
Okay.
So that's like, that's what I'm talking about. Like each one of my meals has a protein portion. It can either be 1 or 2 portions depending on how big it is.
Okay.
Like, for example, a scoop of protein is 1 protein portion.
Okay.
Some of my meals have 2 scoops. So that's 2 portions of protein I have in that meal.
So it's person to person, and it's funny because it's like it takes away that one size fits all. Like
Right.
you do have to think about it. You do have to look at it for who you are, where you're at, what you're doing.
Yes.
And it's going to be harder, and you might need to do some more research. Like there's not just a calculator that will solve this for you. You have to like play around with it.
Well, you have to do the same amount of research as looking at MyFitnessPal, typing in that I'm trying to eat a piece of flank steak, and then how much does the flank steak weigh? Oh, now I have to weigh my flank steak.
Yeah.
Well, that's the same portion that you would use for your portion diet that you just had to weigh anyways to put in with MyFitnessPal.
And also keep an eye on your steaks because some of those have way more fat than you're willing to admit.
Yeah. So,
Like the difference between a ribeye and a sirloin. The sirloin is like 100% meat. Ribeye is like 50% fat.
And guess which one tastes better?
yes.
The ribeye.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, what I would say is like with the portions, what you do is you have like your own, portion identity. Let's say that. We'll get into.
I like that. I like that term.
Some catchy words. You have your portion identity.
Portion
You're like,
identity.
for me, or for you or whatever, maybe it's like a 5 ounce protein serving, and then maybe it's like a half a cup of rice serving of carbs, which is there's equivalent portions of that for bread, for potatoes, for pasta, whatever carb you choose. And then what your coach will do is he'll give you like a diet, and he'll give you your meals, and then he'll say for breakfast have your carb and protein portion, for lunch have carb and protein portion, for dinner have protein and veggie portion. And it's like all you have to do is follow that simply,
Yeah.
as opposed to like trying to figure out what foods you're going to put in there and like searching, oh, does this Chipotle, bowl have the right amount of carbs in it, or am I going to blow my
I'm
calories?
specifically under attack right now. I am very good at finding the Chipotle stuff in MyFitnessPal.
Well, I mean, it's there, and that's what it's good for. But I would say like the real like lifestyle athlete does portions for probably 80% of the time, and then the rest of the time they track. Because it's like, guess what? You're on a trip, on a vacation, or, you had like a late business meeting or something, and you're away from your meals. Now you have to make it work on the fly.
Okay. Now, does portions mean that you don't have to pay attention to calories now?
Nope, you don't if you're eating the same portions every week.
So if you just know,
Yeah.
you can now say, like, these are my portions, this is my reality. But that means that you have to be consistent with your meals now.
Yes, which is the expert ninja level.
That's the problem, is that you can't just like run to different places and be like, oh, well, this is like technically a protein portion, this, that, and the other. You don't know what they put in that burger. Maybe has breading in it. Maybe it has extra fats. So the only way for this to work is you have to like kind of be realistic with yourself about what you're eating, and that you might have to just stick with it.
Well, it's like doing the hard work in the beginning or doing it later. So it's like if you're tracking and you're eating random foods, on the daily, you have to recalculate and re-trajectorize your food constantly, which, takes a moderate amount of work.
Yeah.
Now, if you do portions and consistency as your option, then yes, it takes some experimentation, figuring out which foods that you can eat long term. It takes some practice weighing and figure out what, how much does that potato weigh, how much does that piece of steak weigh. But once you do that work in the front end and figure out what your portions are and which foods that you like, then you just eat the same things, and then you don't have to make any adjustments.
What's interesting about it is it's a lot like deciding you don't drink anymore. So when people decide they don't want to drink anymore, and there's a lot of social pressure to like, oh, we're going out to the bars tonight, and you want to drink because you don't want to be the weird guy, odd man out.
Right.
So when you're tracking your portion, tracking your meals, it's almost, if not the same, if it's probably worse.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we're going to Ruby Tuesdays to go get some burgers and chicken parmesans. Come out with us. It's like, I'll come, but I'm probably just gonna like hang. And it's like now you're the weird guy not eating because like you're on a strict diet or you didn't plan for this short notice. So you're like, hey, I'll come and hang out, but I'm not gonna eat.
Right.
So you kind of just have to have the willpower and the wherewithal to just be like, hey, like this is what I'm prioritizing right now. Like there is a amount of decision making that happens there that you're gonna be, unless everyone around you is also on their shit, which is highly unlikely. Yeah, you're just gonna have to be the weird guy who cares about his physique.
Well, if that's a priority of yours over being socially, active, then that's the sacrifice you're making.
Exactly. Yeah. And the thing is, you're not weird. It's like if people, it's funny because it's always gonna be like I'm going to be as nice about this as possible. It's always going to be someone who's like in bad shape or someone who hasn't been taking care of themselves. That's going to be the one who like targets you like, well, why don't you just get dessert? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? It's just like, hey, how about you just like let me do my thing over here in my corner? Like I'm doing me, like just ignore me. Like I didn't question you for why you got like the super size of it. So let's all just calm down. It is going to be hard in a lifestyle standpoint to say like, I'm going to take control of my diet. Which I think is a lot of people don't realize when they start out, is that there's like a lot of pressures from all sides, and there's a lot of things you're just gonna have to say no to, not just from like a craving standpoint, but from like a social and lifestyle standpoint. Like anyone who grew up in like a Hispanic household knows, like if you walk into that room, you're gonna be under assault to be eating high fat meats, frijoles, tortillas. And they will get offended if you don't eat it because it's cultural. It's cultural. It's a cultural thing. But like you either have to stick to your guns or you have to be willing to either make it work somehow, like do the math before you get there, figure out how you can make this work, or just don't go, or just be willing to get berated the entire time. That's just life for you.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. It's like sometimes you can't just make it fit with your diet depending on your goals and then where you're at with everything. I think when I first started, I was like, I had to track. I don't think I was mentally ready to do portions because I was too attached to trying to fit things into my diet all the time, as opposed to just once in a while. Yeah. And when I guess what the big game changer for me was when my performance in the gym became so important that I had to eat to meet those performance goals. And the foods that I had to eat had to come from only a certain small list because otherwise I would be too full or bloated or I wouldn't get enough calories in and then my performance would suffer. And when that became like the more important, then I feel like the eating became a lot easier.
It does. And you get better at it. And you get better at dealing with it. You get better at finding the situations where it works. And if you have good friends and stuff, they'll support you. And especially if you're very clear with them, like, hey, this is my goal, and I want you to support me on this, and this is going to be how I get better, and this is my goal. And if you support me with this, I'll be much happier. And they'll be like, yeah, I get to support them.
Well, I'll be honest. I actually cut out friends in my life that were too into partying because I kind of shifted into that fitness lifestyle. Like, I was like, I had friends that I was going to school with that like all they did every weekend was want to go out and party and stay out until Old Town till 4 a.m. And it's like when I decided to prioritize the fitness and the gym and training aspect, then I actually had to like surround myself with people who were more into that and focused on that. And then that way you don't have as much negative social pressure to do these things that you don't want to do anyways, because your group is already on the same page as you on like, sticking with your routine.
Like one of my least favorite things that's been popular on Instagram has been the thing that's like, if your top 5 friends aren't talking about stocks, houses, and businesses, then you need to reevaluate.
That is your most favorite thing. You bring that up all the time.
Oh, man.
I was going to get there. I swear to God. So they're talking about like, you got to be the top 5 friends if they're not talking about this, that, and the other. And then my favorite joke is like that some guy responded like, if your top 5 friends aren't talking about pooping, peeing on poop, pooping on pee, then you need to find new friends. I think it's a stupid statement. Like you don't have nothing. First of all, if I meet you and you're talking about crypto in the first day or two, first 2 times of us meeting, he waited a while. He waited almost a year before we started talking about crypto. He's safe now. But if I meet you in the first 2 times you say the word anything about cryptocurrency, it is unlikely that we will ever be close friends. But when you get rid of the Gucci belt that you barely afford and the tight pants from American Eagle, it's a good statement because if you surround yourself with people that want to do the same things as you or want to do better things, like it's when you get out of the army, a lot of people lose that because like they start getting fat because they're not surrounded by people who work out every day. When you quit a job where everyone's like a front runner of the stuff and like you move and you're sitting at home, it's like, well, I don't really feel like doing anything more. It's like if you don't surround yourself with front runners, it's unlikely, if you don't naturally do it yourself, you're going to be less likely to become a front runner. A lot of time you want to build yourself up to the occasion.
Well, you're right. It helps. And even if it doesn't feel good, it helps, because like one thing I noticed is when I started working with 5-Star is I would show up to work and, you know, all the trainers would be getting ready for their sessions and they'd be on break or whatever. And every time the two like OG trainers that were always jacked, they were like, they'd bust into their meals every time we're on a break. They would get 3 meals in at work.
Yeah.
And it'd be like, well, damn, you're like eating every single time you get a break and you're always getting these meals in. And it's like, I saw, you know, what it took to be at that level. And I was like, wow, okay, now that I'm surrounded by these people on a daily basis because I work with them 5 days a week, then I kind of see what it takes, and it helped me accept and appreciate that mindset and that action and be more open to doing it myself.
Yeah.
That's what it did.
I agree with that entirely. You see the people you want to be around. It's the whole thing. Like, don't be the dumbest person, or don't be the smartest person in the room. It's better to be never be the smartest person in the room, because then that just means you're going to be getting brought down. It's better to be the idiot in the room and get brought up. I think that's just the way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, it's also funny because like Demitry cheats a lot. We're just gonna like throw that out
I
there.
cheat a lot. What?
We all have our cheat
How do you
days.
handle like social situations?
I don't.
Yeah, like we're all going out to dinner.
Right.
And this is where Demitry cheats.
Yeah.
Is at dinner time.
Right.
Because me, Taylor, him, Joseph, you know, whoever.
Yeah.
How do you order food in that situation?
Well, I'm very bad at that too, so I just like try to save my cheat meals for when we do go out or whatever, and we're gonna go out and I'm just gonna like order anything anyways. I save it for then. Or it's like I guess there isn't or. I just try and avoid putting myself in that situation when I can't afford to have a cheat meal. Fortunately, right now I get 2 cheat meals a week, so I can that's pretty good. Two hangouts a week with drinks and food. I think that's a pretty solid week right there.
That's good.
You don't see the part where I don't eat all day because I know that there's going to be a thing, and it's not necessarily the best way to do it, but like, yeah, that's the thing. It's, do I cheat? Maybe. I'm feeling personally attacked right now, but yeah, no, that is the best way. Either you avoid it or you like have to decide you're going to make it work somehow.
If it's a refeed that's on your plan, it's not cheating. So.
That is. Yeah. That's true. That's a very easy way to work it out. Put those on the weekends. If your refeed day's on a Wednesday and you intend to have plans on the weekend, it's like maybe you need to kind of figure that out.
So maybe just schedule.
Maybe like make that make sense. Make it make sense. That's the easiest way I can put it.
Yeah.
So let's wrap this up on making adjustments. You've figured out your metabolic rate. You've kind of like are nice in an area. You've lost a bunch of weight. You're no longer in the realm of your life is a whole cheat meal, but now you kind of want to make a change. You're like, okay, I'm skinnier now, but I want to get buffer, or I'm wanting to shred down. Like, how do you even approach changing a formula that's working? Because a lot of people get worried, like, I don't want to fix something that's not broken, but it's also not where you want to be.
Well, it's basically you have to first internalize the mindset that you will have to make multiple changes throughout your cut or bulk. That's just how it works, because your body makes progress when it's pushed out of homeostasis. So once you realize that, then it's like you kind of like start pushing until you get that adjustment. You're like, I'm going to keep dieting and keep, staying on my cardio until my coach has to feed me more. That's how I like to do it.
Yeah.
So it's like, or if we're bulking, then it's like I got to earn that next calorie bump or whatever. So that what I like to do is, first off, if you're not consistent and you're missing meals or you're adding food, then how will your coach know what adjustment to make?
True.
You can't really make an adjustment until you had at least 7 days of consistency in order to see anything. So it's like what you do is basically as a coach, I've seen a bunch of different methods, at 5-star, we do our body scans through the machine, and that tells us exactly like what your electrical impedance for muscle mass and hydration and body fat is. So that's easy. We can check that every 2 weeks and make adjustments like based on how we see the numbers changing. What every other coach that works with people online does is they have you send in progress pictures either every week or every 3 or 4 days. And then after a couple of check-ins, if they don't see the changes they want, then they make an adjustment. And that is usually in the form of, as I said, portions, where they're going to be like, okay, well, you didn't lose any fat and you actually like gained 2 pounds. So we're going to take 2 portions of carbs out of your low days.
Okay.
You know, that's what they'll do.
So really the first step of making an adjustment is you have to have already been consistent. Like, it's actually not really hard to adjust unless you haven't been consistent.
Right. That's the tricky part is most people, even good, dieters are like not 100% all the time. So it's like, is that adjustment necessary, or is it, or are we adjusting enough even? It's like, you don't know sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we've come to the conclusion that it's still never going to be easy to get on a air quotes diet or a change in lifestyle, but it's not this arcane secret with all of this secretive stuff going on in the background of like, oh, you'll never find this stuff out. You might need some help from be a nutrition dietitian trainer, but ultimately it just comes down to finding out, the portions, the control, the making a decision that these are the foods that we're going to focus on. These are the foods that we're going to eat, and we're going to stick to it. And if that doesn't help, then we can adjust.
Yes.
Because if you keep changing the variables, how are you going to ever know?
Yeah.
Like if it's elementary at the end of the day, but in practice it's hard. It's making the decision every single day.
Well, people try and make it too complicated, and at the end of the day, if you do the work in the front end, then you basically come out with an end result of eating similar meals and being consistent so you can make changes. Like, just go look at any like IFBB pros meals from day to day. They're all very similar. It's like, it might be pasta as opposed to rice, but it's still like 300 grams of carbs at the end of the day. Yeah. So the diets are not as drastically different as people think that they are. So, which is one of the number one
complaints of people who are trying on diets. Like, I don't want to be bored. It's like, well, then it might be that you don't want to be thin. So sometimes you just got to be willing to sacrifice the good foods.
Or maybe they just need to be better at cooking.
That is actually a good point, because we'll wrap up on this thought. Everyone always used to be like, yeah, you got to eat broccoli, rice, chicken. And for a long time, that was it. That was just it. And then suddenly someone like who was into bodybuilding was just like, no, actually, I'm a good cook. Like, I can make this not suck.
Yeah.
And then they started selling everyone has a diet freaking cookbook that are of varying levels of good, and most of the time it's just stuff they stole from the internet and put a nice picture. But and
also gave like a 30-page essay on
there's always a 30-page essay. So
my abuelita
was so good in macros. This is her bean burrito that she used to win the IFBB pro. Well, we always guys, we thank you. Please send us your listener questions. We love to see it. You know where to find us, BNS_radio. You can find me on Instagram at Demitry Sebastian.
Thank you for the donation for Sergeant Bacinio. We appreciate the fund to our freedom of speech.
Exactly.
And you can find me at WKendall_MFT on Instagram. Thank you.
Y'all have a good one.